student loans and how our young people are being crippled. And there's just an example of this. Now, I remember back in 2005 having a member of the United States Senate on this program explaining to me why the new bankruptcy bill that was going to be passed and signed into law by George W. Bush specifically excluded student loans from being able to be discharged during bankruptcy proceedings. And what this member of Congress said was that students need to learn responsibility. If you borrow money, you have to pay it back. I tell it to Donald Trump, who's declared bankruptcy multiple times, but, you know, whatever. So we now have, what, $1.3 trillion worth of student loan debt in the United States, something that literally did not exist 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, before Reagan started destroying the national education system, he had destroyed the free university system, University of California system. Destroyed is perhaps too strong a word. Let's say profitized. And you know, so now anyhow, we've got this insane, massive student debt. And on top of that, there are some individual states that offer student loan programs, right? Everybody wants to get in on the act. There are federal student loans, there are private student loans, and there are state student loans. And one of those states, according to a piece in the New York Times yesterday by Ann Waldman, one of those states is New Jersey. And she talks about how Marcia de Oliveira Longinetti had a very serious problem. Her son was murdered. And he had student loans. And she's going through all his paperwork and all that sort of stuff, and she discovers the student loans, and she says, the federal loans, she called them, and they said, no problem, we'll write them off. And then she called the state of New Jersey because he had student loans through Chris Christie's state of New Jersey. And she sent them the documentation that her son was dead, he had been murdered. You know, can you please write off this loan? He's not around anymore. I mean, this goes beyond bankruptcy, right? He's dead. And the letters she got back from New Jersey said, and I quote, "Please accept our condolences on your loss. After careful consideration of the information you provided, we determined that your request does not meet the threshold for loan forgiveness. Monthly bill statements will continue to be sent to you." Your kid is dead, but he's still got to pay his student loans. You know, it used to be death and taxes, right? The two things you can't avoid. But they didn't charge you taxes after you died. Now, that's on its surface, that sounds pretty crass and gross and uncaring. But then you dig a little deeper into the article. So there's a fascinating article written by Ann Waldman in the New York Times yesterday. And she writes, one of the reasons for the aggressive tactics is that the state depends on Wall Street investors to finance student loans. In other words, Wall Street is issuing bonds, which are debt, on behalf of the state of New Jersey, and to pay for, to put money into the student loan program to loan out. And Wall Street doesn't want to have any losses. I'll read you the entire sentence. One reason for the aggressive tactics is that the state depends on Wall Street investors to finance student loans through tax-exempt bonds and needs to satisfy those investors by keeping losses to a minimum. So the raising of the funds, remember in the very back in the first hour, those of you who've been listening or watching for more than an hour and a half, I talked about how, one of the really big problems that we've got is the fact that most Americans don't understand the difference between what an appropriate government function is and what an appropriate corporate function is. And there are entire industries that are devoted to making sure that we never understand that difference because they want to stay on the government gravy train. Spycraft. You'd think that spying is something that the government should do. More than half our intelligence budget goes to private for-profit corporations. Feeding the military. You'd think that would be something that the military itself should do. I mean, that's how it was always done. And the advantage of it is that the soldier who's pulling KP, kitchen duty, peeling potatoes, if the base gets overrun, can pick up his gun and go out and fight. One of the problems that our soldiers have had in Iraq and Afghanistan is that the people preparing the food are private for-profit contractors being paid $150,000 a year. The company is billing $250,000 a year to our government for. And when the base gets overrun, one of the soldiers has to go protect the cook. I mean, not only does it make no sense, the only way it makes sense is if you believe that all government functions should be an opportunity for somebody in the private sector to make a buck, which, of course, is the libertarian/Republican philosophy. So they privatized the acquisition of the funds that are going into the pool that is being, lent out to people for college as student loans. They privatized that, so they got to get really aggressive about getting their money back because those private investors want their money back. And then they privatized the bill collecting. The cases, Ann Waldman writes, the cases are handled by debt collectors who can tack on another 30% in fees on top of the outstanding debt. 30%? A spokesman for Governor Chris Christie said the governor did not control the authority and declined to respond to questions about the loan program. But Mr. Christie, a Republican, appointed its executive director, Gabriel Charette. He also has the power to appoint at least 12 of the agency's 18 board members and can veto any action taken by the board. Now, this is the board that determines, okay, where are we going to get the money from for these student loans? Oh, let's get it from Wall Street. And, of course, we're going to pay Wall Street a nice profit on that. And how are we going to make sure that they're collected? Oh, we'll hire for-profit companies and give them 30%. And Chris Christie says, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't have anything. I don't control that authority." But he appointed 12 of the 18 board members, and he has veto power over anything they do or say. And he appointed its executive director. Tell me this is not sick and twisted. And this is just another example of this Republican ideology of anything you can make a buck of. First of all, college should be free. The big lesson we learned from the GI Bill was that for every dollar we invested in educating our young soldiers who came back after World War II, we made, and by we, I mean the federal government, we the people, we made $7 in increased tax collection over their lifetimes for every dollar we invested because they earned more money than they would have earned without a college education. So college should be free, number one. And number two, this is nuts.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.